Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. You know, you get in your car, you back down out of the driveway, you take off, you drive down the road, you don't think much about it. Turn on the switch, the electricity comes on, you don't think much about it. Turn on the water flows, you don't think much about it. But in reality, all of these things require infrastructure. Infrastructure is a large public or private project that affects thousands of people within a community. They are the bridges that we build. They are the highways. They are the pipelines that bring us the fuels that heat our home and run our cars. All of these things require investment, planning, and they involve crossing miles and miles of land. So when a county looks at developing for their future, they look at infrastructure development. And it can be hard to do in a place where federal government is so prevalent. Some of Utah's eastern counties decided that they wanted to take stock of what they had in infrastructure and how they could make it easier to develop it in the future. Here is what they came up with.
Roads, internet, electricity. All aspects of our modern world considered to be essential in day-to-day life. When taken together, they may seem incredibly different from one another, but they have more in common than you might think. Roads, internet, and electricity are all considered infrastructure, the basic physical and organizational aspects of our society. Arguably, one of the most important tenets of modern civilization, healthy infrastructure keeps us connected and productive, while unhealthy or insufficient infrastructure can drastically affect our daily lives.
You know, infrastructure from a county standpoint is all the way from roads, power systems, water systems, even sewage, but it also extends well beyond that to transportation issues more like the railroad, pipelines that transport oil and gas. Especially in our county, it pertains a lot to roads because of the need for trucking to haul the coal to and from the load-out facilities. We went through the floods this last week. We lost 3 or 4 parts of roads, and so you hear about that when they access a subdivision that's out in the county, and now they don't have any access in or out.
One of the things we're working on for Emery County is getting natural gas to the municipalities or the areas that don't. And so far it's been a hard conversation talking with the state, talking with Questar to get those lines put in.
In 2014, a variety of important infrastructure needs prompted elected officials from around the state to form the 6-County Infrastructure Coalition. The group is organized as a public entity, allowing its members to build essential regional infrastructure elements that span across county lines. As of today, the 6-County Infrastructure Coalition has 3 projects in various stages of completion and 10 more potential projects that meet their criteria for consideration.
We've come together as 6 counties, hopefully soon to be 7 counties on the eastern side of Utah. And that gives us the ability to utilize our collective resources in making applications for loans that would help with infrastructure. For example, right now we have an application we're working on for a pipeline that comes from Duchesne into Carbon to the rail that would bring that crude and allow that oil to be transported to the Salt Lake market and any place in the United States. Small counties, we struggle to have all the resources that we need at that point in time. But with the 6-County Infrastructure Coalition, I really believe that it is an economic power, it is an engine that will enable us to chart our course in the future.
How does the coalition work? What are some of the projects they're overseeing? How will these projects affect you? Stay tuned for this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm Don Dunbar.
Thanks, Don. We've covered the what. When we come back, we'll join our panel. We'll discuss the why here on the County Seat as we talk about infrastructure in rural Utah. We'll be right back.
When the road takes you farther than you knew possible, when the world is more beautiful than you've ever seen, when home is more comfortable than it should be, this is when you know you're in Kane County. The perfect mix of rural and urban, culture and adventure. Glendale, Orderville, Kanab, Bigwater, small towns with more to offer than just peace and quiet. Kane County, Utah. Find the new you.
There's a little place on a Utah map where where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking on a general topic of infrastructure development, the importance to counties today, in specific, the 6-County Infrastructure Coalition. Joining us for the conversation, member of the coalition, San Juan County, Commissioner Bruce Adams, the executive director of the 6-County Infrastructure Coalition, and Utah State Senator Ralph Okerlund. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Always good to see you guys. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, always
So,
good to be in.
Well, thanks, Ralph. Why did we do this? I mean, you know, people look at this and they go, oh, you've got, you know, Association of Counties, and you've got 6-County Association of Governments. You got all these layers. Why another one? Why did we put this together?
We as commissioners were talking about the need for infrastructure, especially as it relates to rural counties in Utah. And we decided that we really didn't know what kind of infrastructure corridors we had in each of our individual counties. So we thought maybe it would be a good idea to identify all of those corridors that exist in our counties for power lines, gas lines, roads, ditches, anything that had to do with delivery of infrastructure. And we decided maybe it would be a good time to map that out so that we knew where those corridors existed, what the ability was to expand the corridor or use the corridor for other types of delivery. And that's kind of how it got started, Chad.
How did you get hooked into this, Ralph?
Well, you know, once the coalition was formed and the counties decided to go about the process of forming a coalition, they applied for a grant from the Community Impact Board, and were able to get a grant that allowed them to be able to do the studying that needs to be done and pay for some administration to be able to put this organization together and to be able to do a really good study on what the needs are, the proposed needs are for infrastructure in the eastern part of the state particularly. And you know, infrastructure is so important to everything that we do that sometimes we take it for granted. We have to have good roads, we have to have good delivery systems for water. More importantly, for the jobs that we have in the eastern part of the state, we have to be able to move product in a lot of cases from one county to another one around the state. And often one county is doing one thing while another county is doing another. So the idea here is that we pull the counties together and we be able to say, okay, what are all of our needs specifically for each county, and how can we help one another and do the best job of providing a system of delivery for the products that we have out there. And that can be everything from water to energy to tourism, as you think about the delivery that we have in that part of the state. So my job was to, number one, bring all the counties together and have them working together, and then make sure that we get a really good study done, oversee a study where we can make sure what our needs are and what it will cost, and what is the most effective way of being able to preserve these very important corridors that Commissioner Adams was talking about.
So a question immediately comes to mind. Real easy for 6 counties to get together and talk about, you know, roads. That's all public, that's all government. Some of the ditches possibly, but usually they'd be like a canal company or something. A lot of this is private infrastructure. I mean, the Rocky Mountain Power, and you've got different people running pipelines. How do you fold that into a governmental organization? That seems like a challenge.
We didn't really try to take ownership of any of that infrastructure, Chad. We just wanted to identify where it was in our county and if there was a possibility for expanding within that corridor. Maybe somebody else wanted to put a delivery system. Was it possible to use the same corridor for another company? For instance, if you had a power line going through your county, maybe there's a need for a pipeline. Can those two coexist within the same easement? That was what we tried to do.
So it seemed to me that, and we'll pick this up on the other side of the break, but they would have a connection where maybe those private entities would want to cooperate or participate financially and strategically with the coalition. And that's where we'll take this up. We're talking on the county seat about infrastructure and a new coalition for the eastern counties of the state to be involved in it. We'll be right back with more County Seat right after this break.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake Adventure? Snowmobile action? Pristine skiing? Spectacular solitude? Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We are talking about the 6-county infrastructure coalition. We understand the motive for forming it, but we want to look at some of the obstacles that take it to fruition. So I did ask the question, or was poised to before the break, when you've got a private entity and they're benefiting from your efforts and they want to contribute both financially and strategically, sometimes that's a really hard interface to make with governmental agencies. How do you do it?
It can be difficult. What we are in the process right now is trying to identify models from other states and even other countries. Europe has been doing public-private partnerships for a number of years, and it's been very successful over there. We're going to have to be more efficient in the way that we do business as we see all of these infrastructure needs that we have here in the West, especially in the eastern part of the state with the economies that we have and all of the production that takes place there. We're going to have to find ways to be able to work with private partners. The importance of that is often private partners are those who can benefit from some of the projects that are done, but the public need is so compelling that the public needs to be involved in not only the process, but also in the development of the project. It's much easier for a public entity like the coalition, now that it's formed, to be able to work with other government entities like the federal government, the BLM and others, to be able to get permitting and some of those things in place so that then the private entity can come in and be able to do business. And so that partnership can be very important. A really good example of that is one of the projects that we've already started working on delivering broadband to Daggett County and San Juan County, which are two of the last places in the state that we don't have broadband capability. So the reason we don't is because it's difficult to get there. It's difficult to do that because of all of the federal lands and that not a lot of people to be able to be served, and so there's an economy of scale there. We are able to pull the public entities with the private entities together and put together a project that we think works. And we're in the process right now of working with Strata in the eastern part of the state, northeastern part of the state, to be able to deliver services to Daggett County. That's huge for Daggett County.
Oh yeah, all 900
of them. It allows them
to
be able to do business. And
well, Chad, as you know, there's an awful lot of public ground in the state of Utah. Probably 67% of all the ground in the state of Utah is controlled by the federal government. So you need a way for government-to-government relationships, usually counties or state government, working with the federal government to allow some of this infrastructure to happen. And I think the private sector's had enough experience working with the federal government that they welcome the counties or the state government to help them in a public-private partnership to work with the federal government so that some of these things can happen, such as the broadband that Ralph is talking about, and there are many other things that we as counties and state officials can help the private sector with in their efforts to provide those infrastructure needs.
When you were saying experience on the private sector side, it seems like there probably needed to be an adjective in front of that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just plain experience that made them come with welcome arms to you guys.
Right.
So what do you hope to accomplish? What's your vision of this going forward?
Our vision is to be able to, number one, identify a number of projects that we think that make a lot of sense for us to start working on immediately. Broadband is a good example of that. Another one that we're working on right now is a pipeline that would deliver oil out of the Uinta Basin down to the rail in Carbon County, the Wildcat Loadout Center, or another one possibly in Carbon County, where then that black wax crude from the Uinta Basin can be shipped to the refineries in North Salt Lake or any other refinery in the country once you get it to rail. It makes that product worth more. It kind of eliminates the discount that has been placed on it before, because then there becomes a broader market for it. And it also allows the ability to take 300 oil trucks a day off from Highway 40.
That's only one way too, right?
That's only one way,
yeah.
That's right. It's actually 600 trips if you count both ways. Down Main Street in Heber City and into North Salt Lake, all of those big heavy trucks. So there's a lot of safety issues there that are resolved, a lot of air quality issues. It becomes much more efficient to be able to pipe that oil down to a loadout and then be able to train ship it, so you don't have all of the bad air quality issues as well. So there are a lot of projects like that that we can be involved in, that we want to be able to make a difference in the state on those kind of projects.
Did the grant get consumed mostly originally with identifying these places? I mean, I wouldn't normally think of that as oh, well, we don't know that there's a high power line here or there's an oil pipeline there, but then I start thinking about how many hundreds of thousands of acres there are in a county, especially like San Juan, it's so big, that you probably don't know where they are.
I think each county commission is well versed in what infrastructure needs there are in their counties, and sometimes those tie right in with the next county that is bordering you. And so when the commissioners got together and started discussing this, they realized that the needs overlapped. Just because there was a county line didn't mean the need stopped at the county line. The need continued on through the next county and maybe even the next county.
That raises a very good question, because so far you've talked about those imaginary lines that divide counties. But in your case, you've got an imaginary line that divides a state. What are you going to do about that?
Well, again, just because there's a state line, it doesn't negate the need. There are needs that go beyond our state borders. And so we intend, through our coalition, to contact counties in other states and see what their needs are and try to figure out how we can work cooperatively with them to help solve their problems as well as the problems that we have in our own counties.
Is it possible for, say, a Dolores County, which butts up against San Juan County, or is it Grand? I can't remember, but one of the Colorado counties to actually join a coalition that's Utah-centric?
You know, we have met with a lot of the county commissioners from western Colorado, also northern Arizona and southern Wyoming. And they're very interested in maybe not joining our coalition. Maybe that could be an option at some point, but maybe another kind of a coalition where we have a multi-state group and we're dealing with some of these same kinds of issues. You know, Bruce, we're working on the Swinging Bridge project up in Daggett and Moffat County that cross the two state lines. So there are a lot of things that we can do if we can work together and work with all the different entities and agencies.
So far we've identified, you know, like power lines, people think about that, pipelines, people think about that, aqueducts or canals, okay, people think about that, roads. What other things are, the bridge, what other things kind of fall into that infrastructure description?
Oh, I'm not sure I can think of anything beyond that right at this point, Chad, but I think once we get the infrastructure map in place, other things will come from the private sector, other needs will come from the private sector that we can certainly help with. And so we just want to get everything mapped out so that we know what we have existing, and then we can determine what the future needs are. Who knows? You know, the world changes pretty fast.
It sure does. We're going to take a quick break here on the county seat. We'll be right back. We're talking about the infrastructure coalition that's been formed here in the state of Utah, so the 6-county infrastructure coalition. We'll be right back in just a second.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
The weekends just never feel like they're long enough. By the time you get to a destination, you're worn out and you may need a vacation to recover from your last vacation. The solution is closer than you think, and that's just what you need. You can find the desert at Little Sahara, the cool refreshment of Yuba Lake, escape to the green of the forest on the Nebo Loop. Make your escape to Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
Beautiful scene, isn't it? The great wide spaces of the wild, wild west. Hi, I'm Chad Booth, host of At Your Leisure. I'm asking you to support the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Their efforts responsibly preserve access to our public lands. If it were not for the Blue Ribbon Coalition and their efforts, you may not have access to millions of acres of land across the West. This is America's playground, and if we don't do anything, we are going to lose it. Join, participate, and donate.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah, mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about infrastructure, the Infrastructure Coalition. It's been a great half hour. I do have one more question, because you alluded to it earlier in the conversation that you know, you can envision a power corridor maybe carrying a pipeline, and so you don't have to go through that process with the federal government of doing NEPA on a whole new area. You can just, it seems simpler to add something. How many different things do you think realistically you could put in a 100-foot right-of-way?
You know, we're in the process right now, Chad, of addressing that very question with a study that we have gotten some grant money to do in potential right-of-way in the Book Cliffs area, where we'll be issuing an RFP very soon, and we'll have a consultant out there looking at a potential right-of-way where we could talk about everything that we could possibly need there. Everything from water pipelines to bike paths, a roadway, trails that may cross or be coexistent with a roadway, potentially any kind of production kinds of material that may be used in that roadway, maybe someday even a railway. If there is a way for us a need for us to be able to do something for the economy, we're going to want our consultants to look at what it would take to be able to do that. So that's the idea, and one of the big things that the coalition is doing is trying to find out how we deliver those kinds of services.
That could even include broadband or fiber or cable or anything that's related to that industry as well.
Sure. Okay, well, my head's still trying to absorb all this. Are there any final thoughts, any points we've missed today?
Well, I think what the Infrastructure Coalition is trying to do ultimately, Chad, is to help enhance the money that comes to the Permanent Community Impact Board Fund. And anything that we can do with infrastructure that helps move that product will feed the fund. Which all rural counties basically have
where the fire station
have
comes
an opportunity to go get that money. And so we're trying to help the Community Impact Board Fund grow to help rural communities to develop all of the infrastructure needs that they have, because you just simply can't tax people with so much federal land. You can't just keep taxing people higher and higher to help meet those needs.
Understood. Ralph, quickly, any final thoughts?
Well, that's a really great point. Commissioner Adams is the chair of the Six-County Infrastructure Coalition, and that's very important to him, but it's very important to the entire state. The Community Impact Fund Board has been able to fund just about everything that's nice in rural Utah, not just for those 6 counties in our coalition, but throughout the state. As you said, it's the fire stations, it's the city council buildings, it's the water systems, it's all of those things that in rural Utah we need so bad.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Folks, thank you for joining us. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Be involved, be part of the discussion. You do that best by tuning into the County Seat every week. We'll see you next week. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on the County Seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of the County Seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4 Good for Utah.